So let's take a peek at our geometric style as part of the Voodoo Concept Art series. This is a bit more stylized than the other illustrations, plus it uses a slightly different approach to create it, in that it relies as much on the select tool to create shapes as it does on actual brushwork, so it's an interesting one to try out. This is a slight variation of the cut and grad colouring method, which is a really useful trick to have in your pocket for colouring and rendering. In this, we're using it mainly to help us give crisp, clean areas of shapes and colour, which are the hallmark of this style. For this video, we thought we'd do a stylized illustration of Ahsoka from the Star Wars universe, as she's not only a kick-ass character, but also has great character design with an interesting face, markings, clothing, colouring. We thought it'd be worth giving you a peek at the time-lapse of our sketch in this one too, before diving straight into the actual rendering techniques, as it's a little bit different in that for this one we're looking for geometric shapes we can use to stylize our features. So you'll see lots of triangular and kite shapes as well as ovals and circles popping up. Make sure to also check out the tips video linked below too. You'll notice we've used the symmetry tool to cut our sketch work in half, and this is one of the tips you'll find here. We'll make a few decisions on how much to stylize certain parts of our face as we work through it. Some of them will end up more geometric, others more natural. There's no hard and fast rule for this though, so it's just a case of finding a balance that you like yourself. We've created this using our Voodoo Concept Art pack for Procreate, Photoshop, Affinity Designer and Photo, but these illustration techniques are universal and apply to pretty much any illustration software, so it's not needed to follow along. But we would love it if you would check it out at the link below. As with many styles of illustration, we're going to kick off with laying down our flat colours. These are just foundational for the piece. We're not paying that much attention to the colours right now, as we'll tweak these later. We just want to make sure that they're nice and tidy, as we're going to clip other layer colours to them later on. Just make sure to keep all these main flat colours in separate layers. You can either paint in these colours or use the lasso tool to select areas and fill them in. Just make sure whichever method you use leaves you with an opaque flat colours with little or no transparency anywhere. At various stages, it's entirely possible to turn on symmetry for this in your drawing app of choice, or to work at just one side of the face and then duplicate and flip it. And obviously this works if your original sketch is symmetrical. However, we've decided to manually do both sides for a lot of this illustration simply because it creates subtle variation, adds a touch of asymmetry, which takes a touch of the digital feel off it without losing the sharp geometric structure of it all. Let's add a little detail to Ahsoka's headgear. On a new layer, we're going to use the select tool to draw the shapes for the pattern. Again, check out the tips video linked below on how to do this in all the main apps. A good tip is to set the feather amount a tiny bit above 0 so everything isn't perfectly sharp. Even a feather of 1 pixel on, for example, a 4000 by 4000 pixel canvas like this one is more than enough. We're not too worried about following the sketch perfectly for this. We are looking for a bit of asymmetry here too, so it's not a perfect mirrored image of itself. With everything selected that we want, this time we'll use a grain brush stroking gently over the area inside of the selection so the texture is a little more interesting than a simple flat shape. We'll make these areas a little more solid by going over them again, as we want a colour contrast for these parts, but you can see how you can achieve some very interesting textured looks with this kind of approach. We'll add in some of the eye detail next. This is one of those areas where we're on the fence about creating them as pure geometric shapes or leaving a little more natural, but for now we're going to use the geometric approach and see if it works well. For this we will use the duplicate and transform step, as we do want our eye shapes to be symmetrical, as otherwise it could throw off our whole face later. But don't worry, we'll add some asymmetry with the shadows and colour later on. Similarly, we've kept our face markings and lips symmetrical for now, as these are the main important anchors for her face. It's important to turn off your sketch layer frequently to make sure that it's not hiding any main issues, especially on a geometric style illustration like this. Already we can see it's got some solid shapes and it has an almost vector style look to it, so we're on the right path.
What
start adding some face shadows now, and we'll really start to see the shapes coming out and the face looking much less flat. Using the same main techniques as before, we're just defining the main planes of the face. And if you grabbed our Voodoo brush pack, you can either look at our lighting reference materials or check out the PDF guidebook that are included to help you out with this step. We're just repeating the same process over and over, selecting the area shapes we want, and then painting inside them with various textures and level of opacity brushes. As we progress, we keep checking our illustration with the sketch turned off to see what's needed, to either add shapes to the face or to make various features stronger. So slight colour differences shows off angle changes on the face, while bold lines accentuates the features, just like the inking outlines would do. Because we know it's quite likely that we're going to change the headwear colour, for the more painterly shadows in here, we're going to use a multiply layer blend mode, so it'll be a little bit more forgiving if we do need to change these colours drastically. We likely won't need to also change our shadow colours too. With our face shadows done, let's repeat the process for some of the face's lighter areas, the areas that get hit directly by the overall light. We'll drop the opacity of this layer down a little to taste, as we don't want this too overpowering on this piece. Looking at the illustration, we felt the eyes were too geometric and made her look much harsher than we wanted, so we're going to quickly fix and change them. We'll go for a more natural inked look for these, with a much more fluid shape, which should solve the problem instantly. Now that our overall shape is coming together, we're going to take a look at the colours. Overall, our colours are a little flat and desaturated, so we want to bring them to life a lot more. This can be done on a layer by layer basis, and it's usually how you'd have to do this in something like Procreate, but it's much easier to use a hue saturation adjustment layer in the likes of Photoshop, partly because they apply to all the layers below, but mainly because they're non-destructive, meaning any edits you make aren't permanent, can be tweaked again at any time without losing your original layers. In all software, the hue changes the overall colour tint, saturation is how intense or colourful the colour is, and lightness makes the colour lighter or darker. We're going to make all the colours more saturated on everything, especially the orange skin, as this is what will really make things jump out. We also decided to increase the lightness of the skin markings. This is to make them really jump out with more contrast between their off-white colour and then the skin. You'll notice we're also refining some of the shadows a little. You might notice that we don't really use pure blacks or greys for any shadow layers, even when using multiply blending modes. It's just a nice tip to have a hint of blue or purple in your shadows so they feel less stark or dead. Using a mixture of soft and hard brushes, we just work our way around the piece, adding a bit more shadow depth to everything. Looking at the overall face structure again, similar to how re-inking the main lines in more natural shapes helps soften Ahsoka's face, we're able to adjust the light on the cheekbones so the shape is less geometric and more rounded. It's such a simple tweak, but hopefully it's really noticeable how much this helps. Using a more traditional media style brush, we're now going to freehand paint a few strokes around the artwork. Some of this is to polish off the darker shadows of the piece to give it a little bit more depth, whereas other touches are to make things a little less uniform, digital and geometric. You can easily use your mask select tool to cut more geometric shapes out of the painterly strokes too. Again, it's up to you where you'd like to try to find the balance here. In theory, you could overpaint on most of the image and completely lose a lot of the geometric shapes while you still benefit from the colour values that are already on the canvas. Or you could just leave everything untouched and very vector-like. Personally, something in between feels right here. A trick we use on nearly everything is to create a group folder that's masked with the silhouette of the entire piece. Check out the tips video linked below for more details on this in different software. But for now, in Photoshop, you create your mask selection by holding down the Shift plus Command on Mac or Control on PC and clicking on each of the layer thumbnails. This adds the shape of each selected layer to your selection. When you've everything selected, just create or select a folder and click on the Create Mask icon. Now, any layer you put inside this folder will stay inside that silhouette. Super powerful tip. Next, we're going to create a noise layer in this folder. Create a layer, fill it with white, then go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. I usually use an amount of about 20% with uniform distribution and monochromatic turned on. Change the blend mode to linear burn and check it out. You can reduce the effect to taste by lowering the layer's opacity. Okay, so we're very nearly done now. Up next are the strong lighting effects on the side of her cheeks and head. There's absolutely nothing new here that we haven't been doing already. Use the select tool to choose the shapes and areas we want to have, then paint inside the selection using a mixture of soft, hard and texture brushes to mix things up. Always worth playing around with the hue saturation and these colours at the end too, to try to find the perfect colours to make everything just pop. Everything else is just small touches here and there to make everything a touch less digital. We're using a layer set to colour dodge blending mode along with a soft brush to gently dab a bit of warmth around the image. Usually on regular skin, a reddish colour works very nicely for this. With Ahsoka's orange tones, we've used something with a little bit more purple as it interacts much better. And that's her done.